And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I am Sarah, the Raging Tomato. We are trying again once more on this new Seriously Saturday series where we can actually get through the conversation, hopefully without yelling and screaming. And I'm really excited for it. This evening, I've got Gnostic Informant, our featured guest, Admiral Gibbs, Uncle Doug, Hunter Kozak, and of course, Benjamin Balterson, here to have a really great discussion and bring forth to you their information, knowledge, and wisdom from all over the world. The prompt of this evening is: the Bible is fabricated history that does not map onto reality. Gnostic, I'd like you to go ahead and give us a go on your opening thoughts, please.
All right, thanks for having me on. And this is one of my favorite topics, by the way. The Bible, I'm talking about the whole Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, Hebrew Bible, New Testament, is fabricated for the most part. Now, there are instances where it draws from actual history. I'm not denying that Israel didn't exist and the kings of Israel didn't exist. There's plenty of inscriptions and corroborating evidence and other primary sources from like the Assyrians, for example, that mention people like Hezekiah, Omri. There's even a mention of House of David. So that's fine. But what I'm talking about is the major roots of the entire Bible, which is the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses. I mean, we're talking. I'm not even talking about the miracles or the talking snakes or the talking donkeys. I can look past that stuff. That's all kind of like low tier. But the claims of Adam being 930 years old, Seth being 912 years old, the descendants all the way up to Noah are all living between 700 and 900 years old. Noah himself being 950 years old. These are things that don't map onto reality. People do not live this long. People who do live that long usually are mentioned in primary sources. There's usually some evidence for this type of stuff. They'd be super famous because they're living for 900 years. And it's not that long ago, actually, because you can do the math, and you can actually do the math using the Bible to calculate backwards. And for example, you could find out exactly how long the flood was from today. You can use David as your anchoring point, which is David reigns between 1000 and 900 BC. And so you can use the Kings and Chronicles sources where it says in 1 Kings 6:1, Solomon's temple was completed 480 years after the Exodus. So that brings us back to 1400 BC around the Exodus. You can use that and keep going back where it says in Book of Exodus, it says Genesis, it says Abram enters Canaan 430 years before that. So we go back to 1900 BC to get to Abraham. And you can keep going back from Abraham to Noah through the generations, Terah, Nahor, Serug, Ru, all the way up to the flood. And then you end up another 292 years from Abram and the flood. Then you do all the math, you end up getting around 2000 to 2700 BC, depending on how you do your math, is when the flood happened. So 2,700 to 2,700 years ago, a flood wiped out the entire world. Everything was dead, except for a boat with some animal, with 2 of each animal on it in Turkey. So that does not map onto reality, because that would mean that all of the animals, there'd be a huge concentration of life in Turkey. And the more you spread out from Turkey, there'd be like nothing. There would be no animals at all in the New World. How the hell did all these monkeys and giant cats and leopards get to the New World from Turkey in such a short amount of time? That's like the crux of the Old Testament Torah stuff. But it gets even worse than that, because when was the Bible even written is another question that I want to address, because it is literally fabricated backdating itself history. There's not a single primary source in any of the ancient world, from Hittite sources, Egyptian sources, Assyrian, Babylonian, anything, Greek, any Bronze Age or Iron Age, nothing, no inscriptions anywhere that mention anything from the Torah. Moses is never mentioned. Abraham is never mentioned. In fact, Abraham fights all these wars, and it mentions kings of Sodom, Bera, Bersha, Shinab, king of Admah, Shember, king of Zeboim or Goim in other sources, and then another unnamed king of Bela, who fights against these other Babylonian kings, Amraphel, the king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, and Shedelamer, king of Elam, and then another guy named Tidal, king of the Goyim, king of the nations. These people don't exist in any primary sources anywhere. These are all made. There's not a single mention of any of these kings, and Genesis is saying that they're all going to. There's like a world war happening, and Abraham's in the middle of it, and Abraham's involved in these battles, and they're fighting over Syria, they're fighting over Mesopotamia, and they're fighting over, and Sodom and Gomorrah get destroyed, and there's nothing anywhere about these 9 kings and Abraham, who at this time would have been 175 years old. 175-year-old man going to battle in Syria with these kings from all over Mesopotamia and the Near East. There's not a single mention in Hittite, Egyptian, Canaanite, Ugaritic, Assyrian, Babylonian, you name it. Nothing mentions this except for the Bible. In fact, no one even mentions anything from the Bible until the Hellenistic period. So the only mentions we get are kings of Israel like Omri, like Hezekiah, like Josiah. The Assyrians mention how they destroyed Jerusalem in the 6th century BC. There is a mention in the Merneptah about Israel's existence. I'm not saying Israel didn't exist. That's in the Merneptah study. But no one ever mentions Moses, Abraham, Jacob. 12 tribes are never mentioned. There's no archaeology for the 12 tribes being allotted in that land. It doesn't exist. It's made up. There's no mention of Isaac. There's no mention of Adam and Eve and Noah. None of them exist in any primary sources until the Hellenistic period. The first person to mention anyone from the Bible is a guy named Hecataeus of Abdera around 310 BCE. That's the first time anyone ever cites the Hebrew Bible. So, and then you have the prophets, and it looks like the prophets are being added in over time. For example, Isaiah mentions King Cyrus by name, but King Cyrus supposedly lived 200 years after Isaiah. That's not how prophecy works. You don't mention literal people's names, and then we're going to be living in a simulation where there's no free will. Everything's planned out. That doesn't make any sense. The book of Daniel literally talking about Alexander the Great and predicting the king Antiochus IV being, coming in and being the abomination of desolation and all this stuff. It's clearly a Hellenistic text backdating itself to previous times. And this is not the only place this happens. This is all ubiquitous in the ancient world. People write texts, pretend to be prophets, predicting things to a T, but it's written later. And also linguists have pointed out, people who know Hebrew and Greek and all this stuff, they read these texts and they can tell by the way the language is, by the linguistics, that this is a later version of Hebrew or Aramaic or whatever Greek, that this is a Hellenistic text by the phrases he's using. It'd be like me today being like writing a text saying, I'm living in the year 1400, and I write, hey, what's up, bro? What are you doing? Like that, people don't talk like that back then. So linguists have pointed out that the style of the Hebrew matches up later times than, for example, Daniel, than it would be. So the point I'm trying to make is there's no mention of anyone. We actually found a city. What about Judean sources? What about the Jewish sources? Don't they mention their own Hebrew Bible at all? Well, it turns out that after when Jerusalem got destroyed by the Assyrians and the Babylonians at the end of the 6th century, at the end of the 7th century, early 6th century BCE, right around 586 BCE, when Jerusalem was destroyed, thousands and thousands of Jews not only got taken to Babylon in captivity, this is historical, we know because the Assyrians mentioned this, but thousands of other ones fled and went down to Egypt. And the Egyptians let them stay in a city called Elephantine. And this city was, let me just mute this.
I was like, I thought I heard music.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to deal with that.
Oh, that's okay.
My last point, and I'm almost done here. This city, Elephantine.
Ringwoodite in the mantle can only be released.
Can you guys hear that right now? Or is it muted? Oh, shit.
We can hear it.
Guys,
okay. We're not dying.
So,
and I will read all of those later too, by the way, so it's okay.
So my last point was, in the early 19th century, 1800s, all the way through the early 20th century, archaeologists started excavating this city called Elephantine. And this is the smoking gun of my argument right now. I really want to deal with this tonight. So this is a Judean city, a Judean colony, if you will. This is where they fled to, inhabited by Jews who worship Yahweh. They have a temple to Yahweh there that's inhabited till 410 BCE. So like 586 to 410 BCE. Perfect time capsule. This is an archaeologist's dream, an anthropologist's dream to find these time capsules. Like, for example, Pompeii in Italy is amazing for archaeologists because we know it ends at 79 BC or AD. So nothing after that can affect the culture. So it gives archaeologists and anthropologists a perfect time capsule so they can examine what was culture like before 79 BCE. Perfect time capsule. Well, we found one for Jews. It's called Elephantine, and they fled there after the destruction of Jerusalem. So this is after the prophets. This is after Genesis. This is after King David, after Kings and Chronicles, after Elijah, after almost everything except for Zechariah, Nehemiah, Daniel. Well, Daniel is actually supposed to be before this, or right around the same time. This is perfect time capsule. We have thousands of texts here written in Aramaic by people who call themselves Yehudim. They call themselves Jews. They know that they say they're from Jerusalem and they fled this destruction. Out of the thousands of texts there, hundreds of good texts, thousands of like little small ones, hundreds of readable good texts that we can read. Guess how much they mention the Torah, their founding mythology? Zero. They never mention Abraham once. They don't mention the Torah once. They don't mention Jacob. They don't mention 12 tribes. All they mention is that they worship Yahweh and other gods too. They're polytheistic. Not only that, they eat pork. They don't honor the Sabbath. They don't even know what the Torah is. We get a letter from around 400 BC from a Jerusalem person, Jew, writing to them, telling them for the first time about Passover. They're learning about Passover for the first time around 400 BC. This is perfect. This is like the smoking gun that all this stuff is fabricated history written later, backdating itself to give themselves a national mythology, just like the Greeks would do with the story of Lysander going up to Mount Delphi and getting the laws from Apollo to bring back to the Spartans. This is what happened with the story of Moses. There's no evidence of anyone citing Moses or anyone knowing anything about Moses until the Hellenistic period. That's my opening statement.
Very well done. Christianity is on the chopping block tonight for sure. I'm impressed. My favorite piece is like learning all of the historical pieces behind like concepts, and you just like laid it out so very well. Ben, I'm going to hand it over to you since Gibbs is running around right now. If you want to give us your initial thoughts with anything Gnostic said, I know you're probably team Gnostic right now, but
this different character, and it has a wholly different series of events. It's in a different time period. It's before the Atrahasis epic actually is written before Noah supposedly lived, according to the Bible. Same with the Epic of Gilgamesh. The whole totally different characters.
And once again, you're glossing over what I've said, which was once again that these are inspired by historical events.
They're literary mimesis. So you have one original source, the Atrahasis, Epic of Gilgamesh. Epic of Gilgamesh first. Atrahasis draws from that and writes another story. The Bible, way later, 1,000 to 2,000 years later, is also drawing from that same global flood myth.
So what about China? Why's China got it then? China, all these are coming from, that doesn't even make sense at all. You're talking about locations, thousands and thousands of miles apart, having the exact same myth. You brought up North America having the same. North America has the same. North America has the same list that these other people do.
They don't have the exact same myth.
Mythology. We have Aztec mythology. We have Mayan mythology.
They all have the exact same myth.
They do. They do have
the Mayan flood story. Does the Mayan flood story say that Noah landed an ark on Mount Ararat?
No, it says that these people came from the sea and brought animals and life to them, and they brought them from it does have
okay. All right, you guys are. I'm gonna call a stall on. I'm gonna call a stall on that one for now.
Be honest, dude. You just made this up.
Let's hand it over
from the West.
Let's hand it over. Let's hand it over to Uncle Doug. It sounds like he had his hand up and wanted to maybe add something in. Go ahead, Uncle Doug. No, you were muted, by the way. Uncle Doug, you're muted.
You're still muted.
There are dozens and dozens of ancient Chinese pictographs. Their language was not letters. Their language was pictures to infer something. The ancient Chinese pictograph for flood is boat and 8 people. The ancient pictograph for garden is a man, a woman, a tree, and a snake. There are dozens and dozens and dozens. In the original language, I believe after the Tower of Babel, people went, created a language.
Not true.
The language, they used pictographs to tell the stories right out of Genesis and right out of, not so much Numbers and Deuteronomy, but out of Genesis.
The Chinese pictograph is not of 8 people in a boat. That's made up. Let's pull it up and look at it. It's made up. Did you get this from RonWyatt.com?
You're right. You won't listen to anybody.
I want to see the evidence. Let's see the evidence. You can't just say shit. You can't just say it's I'm looking at it right now. It's not 8 people.
At the time of King Josiah, they weren't celebrating any of the feasts.
No, they weren't.
They weren't. They were completely apostate. This is in the 600s BCE.
So when were they not apostate?
Why can't I finish the sentence?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Uncle Doug.
If we're just gonna yell, there's no point.
Well, you guys are spewing nonsense. I got to stop you.
Well, hold on. We don't. Hold on. Let me offer clarification.
Go ahead, Doug.
Okay. So if we want to allow people to say what they need to say, even if we think it's absolutely the dumbest thing we've ever heard in our lives, we still want to allow them the room to finish what they're saying. That way we have the full picture, and then we can say that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Okay. But at least we can give them the ability to say it.
Nasik brought up a city that was completely unaware of what they believed or what they should have been believing if they were really Jews and if this Torah really existed and all that. But we see the Bible admitting that even in Jerusalem, there were times in the 600s when Josiah was around, before the 400s that you're talking about, when the whole nation was apostate, didn't have the book. It was buried. The temple was being used as a trash dump, and the whole nation was off track. At the time of Jeremiah, he told them, don't run, just stay, you'll be okay. They all went to Egypt, and a whole bunch of them died. There are multiple, all through Judges, there are multiple examples where the entire nation just brain farts everything they're supposed to be doing and believing and does their own thing. So I don't have any problem that there's a denomination, a faction of Jews that go found a city and forget everything that they're about. We see that in the church today. The other thing is, this debate was supposed to be the Bible, not the Pentateuch. And you're hyper focused on the history of the Old Testament.
You can get into the New Testament.
I'm just saying. So far, that's the discussion we're having.
We can get into the New Testament.
The Old Testament is still the Bible. Yeah. And my comment to Gibbs's line of thinking. So the LiDAR that they used in Egypt on the pyramids, they found that things that are known things were wrong on the LiDAR. So
that's not what they found. They found opposite of that.
Then when it's saying things that we can't verify, well, when the things that we can verify, there's a substantial amount of them that are wrong. Like when the one came out with all the pillars going down under the pyramid and all these things, there was areas and pockets that they were able to that they've had access to, and it didn't match what the LiDAR was showing.
Well, I want to come back to the flood thing, because this is very dishonest what we did. I'm going to go read several characteristics. Here's the Noah flood characters. 1 is bring the animals. That's the one he keeps focused on. 2 is the raven and the dove, and then 3 is that God punished the world. Okay, I'm going to read a couple of different synopses of it. Here's the Inca flood myth. Let's do the Aztec flood myth. Hold on, the Aztec flood myth. This is not related. This is the New World. You brought this up. You said, now why would they have this on the New World? The New World. He says, the Aztecs. They said the purpose was a divine punishment, and all right, and they destroyed it, and then they destroyed it specifically because of the wickedness of the woodmen, right? Here's the Mayan one. Same thing. They destroyed a great deluge because, I flipped these. The wooden people were a failed, mindless creation and rejected, neglected, and honored. They were destroyed as a punishment. The survivors, according to some people.
What's the name of the source?
Hold on. I'm going to read multiple. I'm going to read multiple.
Shit.
Hold on. I'm reading.
Stop. Stop and stop. Listen. Write down your notes.
This is from the Smithsonian.
Hold on. I'm handling this, please. Write down your notes. When they finish talking, then you can go through and call everything stupid shit. Okay. But at the same time, we still have to allow people to talk. It doesn't help any of this conversation if we're just constantly interrupting each other. This show series is meant to not be interruptive. That's the entire.
Can I just ask one thing though? If you're going to cite a source, tell me what the name of the source is.
The Smithsonian Institute. All right, continuing on.
That's a website. What's the name of the
website
sport?
from the Smithsonian. All right, cool. It's talking about the Mayan flood myth. You can just Google the Mayan
Just
flood
Mayan
myth.
flood myth.
Hold
Okay.
on. Why don't you just Google the Mayan flood myth? Right. All right. And once again, I want to keep going. I'm almost done with my point here. And so I'm going to keep going. We got the Mayan flood myth that matches up similar. We have the Raven and the thing. We have the Iroquois flood myth talking about all these different ducks.
What Raven?
Listen,
let him
have
finish.
to do my point.
Gnostic, please let him finish.
I listen. So I'm going through these, and we have multiple examples. Here we have the Inca flood pit. We have the Ucha Uno Pachu. This is from Wikipedia. Right here's the quick one. But we also have the Arizona.edu Peru culture. We can do it from the reading of the Inca creation myth if you want that one. So there's a PDF file right there. If you just Google it, the Inca flood myth talks about them being greedy and not paying attention to their gods, and they were flooded for being evil. This is the same kind of thing over and over and over. We have a similar myth from all these different groups. This is in the New World, and I specifically picked the New World. Now, if we want to talk about they say they're going to be repurposed, this is from Wikipedia, right? And so I got this. This one's from the Ark Encounter Shagit tradition from Washington State. The Shagit people tell a great big community filled with male and female of every animal. That's Washington. We have one from Alaska. Similar thing. Hawaiian tradition is another one. They have tell the god Cain. Oh, that's crazy that name's in there. Tells a man that Nu'u. Oh, that's pretty crazy. How it this is not thing. You can look up these Hawaiian. You can look at any of these myths, and these are all similar myths that are all inspired by something. How would it that somebody spelled Nu'u and there's somebody named Cain? Oh, that's total coincidence in Hawaii. I mean, look, okay, well, it's not
your
fake.
ChatGPT is hallucinating shit to you right now.
You can say it's ChatGPT all you want, but whenever I can provide the source,
name the source. Name the actual.
I just did this. Is this
the name of the inscription?
I've literally just gone through these over and over again. I've gone through several times. I gave you Smithsonian. I just gave you Washington, and each one you don't want to fight with the actual source. You just want to say ChatGPT.
I want to know what the name of the source is, so I can look at it. You're just saying.
I'll give you a source.
Post it in chat.
Yeah, here you go. Here's the Wikipedia page. Right here from there. Yeah, I know Wikipedia can be edited, but just for funsies here, I'll put it in the side chat. Here's the Wikipedia. But Nu'u. There you go. They'll have sources there. And here's a different and that's the flood myth from Hawaii. So that's crazy that a Nu'u was given to a guy by name Cain, and he landed on the vessel on top of a mountain, Mount Rhea, on the Big Island. Whoa, wow, that's crazy coincidence that he lands on a mountain and gets flooded.
Can I respond?
Idiot. This is a 19th century source.
Yeah, but bro, where do you think these myths are coming from, like Hawaii and all these other? Are you denying that Hawaiians have this myth?
You just cited a 19th century source.
Are you arguing that Hawaiians don't have this myth?
It's from the 19th century, from missionaries.
I'm gonna jump in.
Go ahead, Hunter. Go ahead.
Cool. So here's the thing. I think I'm gonna concede a lot more than maybe Gnostic would here. I think that I could fully recognize that maybe the name.
Here's one from Hawaii University.
Okay, I'm conceding this. Okay, let's just say there are a bunch of flood myths in a lot of different societies, and Cain shows up in one of these stories. First off, there's like 1,000 names in the Bible. You could pinpoint this. There are only so many phones themes that we can specifically pull from to create names. I would expect to see some overlap with 1,000 names. That doesn't, to me, register that this is a true name. What I do want to point out is that it feels weird to look at archaeological evidence rather than geological evidence for the flood. The flood is a terrifying thing to occur. It makes sense that would invoke a lot of mythologies around it. It would invoke this sense of terror. Like, what if this happened worldwide? Like, because we could obviously move from one region to another. It doesn't seem to have a lot of historical parallelisms between the myths, but when we look at the geological evidence, we really don't see that there's no geological evidence that a flood would occur, and that's what I would look for rather than how societies would be talking about it. Personally, that would be more convincing to me.
Yeah, and then you look at the evidence; it all lines up with old Earth stuff. Like, for example, when archaeologists and anthropologists, paleontologists, they dig. And they go, the lower they go, the farther down they go in these digs is where they start to find extinct dinosaurs, stuff like that. They never find them on the top layers. It's always 99.9% of the time they can predict what layers they're going to find what fossils based on time and erosion and buildup of dust.
You're so full of crap.
I'm so full of crap. I'm literally giving you the consensus across the board of paleontology. You think they're 6,000 years old, Doug?
Farmers hit dinosaur bones with their tractors.
No, they don't.
Fields.
No, they don't.
No, they do.
When? That doesn't happen. They dig. It's always the bottom layers. They don't find dinosaur bones on top, dude.
Actually, I hate to do this, but Doug is actually right.
No.
Sue, the most famous T-Rex that was ever.
When it comes to PhDs, I agree.
Okay, all right. And by the way, I have the answer. It's the Chamato tribe, Louisiana's got it. The modern tribe in North Dakota and the Apache tribe all have different flood myths that all include a dove. So unless you just tell me these tribes,
those are all modern, dude. Those are all modern.
They're modern.
I've looked into this stuff, dude.
So, but they wouldn't get this from whatever the Atrahasis is, right? They would have their own myth dating back from.
No, there is no evidence that they had their own unique version of this story that was not influenced by the biblical story that was told to them by the Puritans and all the colonists.
And how about the Hadia people all the way in like British?
No. But could you wait? Can we stop moving away from that point? Because it is a super fair point that he's bringing up, which is that a lot of these Hawaiian myths that you're referring to, you said Hawaiian, right? A lot of these Hawaiian myths that you're referring to, if they originated in the 19th century, then of course they probably heard it from Christian.
They didn't originate in the 19th century. Some of these go back all the way back to some of the original inhabitants of the islands.
Can you point to one? Can you point to one that's like inscribed? That all that like the overwhelming consensus agrees is actually from the post from.
I mean, I posted several links in there. I mean, if you want to go through it, and one of them is PBS. We got several from different colleges. We have the Hawaiian from hawaii.edu. I posted a Wikipedia. We put independent blog.
Can you stop?
I posted encyclopedia.com.
Can we use one? Can we just do one?
When you just start naming, you
are gish galloping because can we just focus on one point?
Let's do.
If you ask for sources, I give you sources. It's not a gish gallop.
Let's go one at a time. Then it gives if you want to point out one at a time, and we can go point by point with those, and that way we can actually kind of have the back and forth on disprove or prove.
So the source that he just sent me from PBS is talking about Mesopotamian myths, Utnapishtim from the Epic of Gilgamesh, the one I mentioned, and then when it talks about the Aztec one, it says there's some similarities, but it doesn't say anything about the dove and the raven in this one. So I don't know how you just threw that in there. Then
what is that? What are you trying to prove with that source, Gibbs?
Yeah, hold on. By the way, I didn't say the Aztecs had that one. I said there was other sources. And by the way, he mentions 2 of them, and I just mentioned like about 5 that use that right there.
Can we focus on one though? Because if one of them is wrong, then it seems like you are gish galloping. You're just trying to throw as many.
No. Hold on.
Can I clarify what I mean by that?
Yeah, go ahead.
It seems like you're chucking like 12 sources at us, and when we go, wait, what about this one? This one doesn't really hold up to scrutiny, and you're like, well, look at all the other 11 ones. And then we hold up the second one, and we're like, wait, I don't know if this one makes sense either. And you're I threw out 10, and you keep throwing more. And it's impossible to climb up the mountain of bullshit.
I understand the confusion, honey. Let me explain what's happening.
You're definitely gish galloping.
I have given you multiple sources, right? And I have not made the claim they all match up identically. In fact, I actually argued once that once again, there's some of these don't mention all the animals coming in, right? They don't mention the population. What I have mentioned is some of these have similarities, like, it's God punishing these people, or they're God punishing these people. And then they have similar, they have similar. So what you're doing is actually the dishonest thing, is you're going, since it's not 100% the same, then it has no validity. And what I'm arguing is,
because God is punishing someone.
Hold on. No, but when there's other things that latch up, like, so coincidentally, Cain and Nu'u, and you have things like these other people, I mentioned similarities between Gilgamesh, between the Chinese, between the Aztec, to the Apache, to the Hadia people, all these different groups all over North and South America and Inca. And I point out each one of these has very similar aspects to the story. Now, they don't all line up exactly 1-to-1, because that would be ridiculous. And if that did happen, that would prove definitively.
Why would that be ridiculous?
Because Hunter, listen, if I have something that happens to me, and I don't know, say it happens to me here in Texas, right? And I tell you my version of events, and then you have a similar situation that doesn't line up exactly to your thing, but it's caused by the same thing. That is probably hold on. If the Yellowstone volcano goes off, right, and it affects you, and say, I don't know where you live. Let's say you live in Seattle. And your version of what's going to happen with the Yellowstone, sure, whatever, okay, even same thing. Your version of what happened with the Yellowstone volcano going off is going to be similar, but probably different to my retelling of that event happening here in Texas.
For sure.
So when I am mentioning 15 different things that all have at least 60% of the same story, and they're from all over the world, it does prove that this event probably happened in some capacity.
Here's the difference. I agree with you. I agree with your point, your metaphor. I don't think it's analogous to the situation, though, because If the volcano exploded, okay, for sure, I should probably have a retelling of it. I should say, oh, there's fucking ash in the sky. It's crazy. We've actually seen this. There was 150 years ago. I forget exactly. It was a while ago. There was the entire world almost got covered with like ash from one volcano. I don't know. I'm remembering this vaguely off the top of my head. I forget the exact. But basically, every historical record of that day says, holy shit, the sun isn't out. This is crazy. Every single historical record is very in line with those basic facts. Now, they might disagree on the color. Some might say a dark gray, some might say a light gray, for sure. There's going to be some discrepancies. But the base facts of the matter, there's probably needs to be some through line when it comes to.
You agree there was a flood of some kind?
Yeah, the other big.
There was
big
probably a regional
here,
flood in some areas, of course.
Okay, say it was regional floods in some areas. Would you agree that it was probably caused by one larger natural disaster, like, I don't know, a comet possibly hitting up in the Northern America that raised sea levels potentially?
I don't think we have evidence for that. I would be open to evidence for that.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's
the biggest problem here is for your story to hold up, Gibbs. There was only the people on that ship that survived. Why would there be varying stories?
No, I would argue that once again, it's the same thing as with Cain.
Survivors.
Well, this is the same argument I would make with Cain, right? When Cain goes, oh, he's worried about people in the world, it implies there's other people in the world. Even the Bible is not super consistent on that. Maybe God made other people. Maybe there's other groups of people. Maybe there's other types of people. I would argue, once again, maybe there's survivors that are not just Noah, but they come from some precursor.
That's just post-cost rationalization. You're just making it
no, it's
fit.
not. I mean, once again, I'm just saying I'm making it fit. That's what all archaeology is you have a theory based on historical evidence. You used to think Troy was just a total myth.
No, that's not true.
Then we found Troy.
That's
Troy.
false.
They used to be Troy. No, it's not. It literally, Troy was.
I gotta respond to this.
Troy was literally considered a mythical story that didn't.
And Jericho and Nineveh.
Okay. Gnostic, tell us. Hold on, everybody, shut up. Gnostic, go ahead and tell us about Troy.
No one ever doubted the existence of Troy. Troy is mentioned in the primary sources in the time of Augustus, for example. Augustus went there and rebuilt the city and brought it back up to Roman standards of the 1st century BCE. And it was inhabited by people all the way to the Byzantine region, Byzantine era, I think 11th century, when it finally started to become uninhabited. And the only thing people doubted was the Iliad, the Trojan War with the Trojan horse. People still doubt that today. But when they found Troy, no one was saying Troy's made up. We know Troy existed.
They said that for hundreds of years. They said for hundreds of years it was made up until the 1870s, bro. That is absolutely unequivocal fact. You're the one who's lying now.
Hold on. The two of you, listen, hold on. The two of you, listen to me. We still have Gauntlet later. You can go hash it out and yell at each other all day long later on during Gauntlet. But right now, I want to be able to hear both of you, but I absolutely can't because you're both just hollering over each other. If we could find some form of respect, at least to the conversation, that would very much help us move forward instead of me stalling you out and talking every 5 minutes to interrupt. Okay, go ahead, Gnostic.
As I said, when Schliemann discovered Troy, people already knew Troy was a real place because it's mentioned in all the primary sources all the way through the Renaissance. There's Renaissance writers in the 1400s and 1300s writing about Troy, historical Troy. No one doubted Troy. People doubted the story about Homer. Homer's Iliad is a myth. That's what people doubt. People still doubt that today. Now, Schliemann's discovery did actually attest that there was some sort of war that happened there. So now there's more and more scholars, I think it would be a minority view, that think there was an actual war. They've even found a Hittite source that mentions the king named Alexandu, who some scholars think is the Paris, who's also called Alexander. But the point is, no one ever doubted Troy as a city existed. You just threw that in there to make it seem like scholars are always wrong until you find
the ancient Greeks even thought it used to be a myth, bro. Like you're just lying. You're just lying.
What are you talking about? They lived in the city, dude. What do you think they thought it was meant? They lived there.
But they did not live there. They literally said that the Romans.
You know, Troy's Bible.
Here, go ahead, Uncle Doug. Chime in on this, please.
I'm at a disadvantage because I took debate in high school where you write it on a card and you're graded down if you just insult the other team and scream and yell. So I didn't take TikTok debate. I took actual debate in high school. So I'm at a real disadvantage here. But let me point out that Troy's not in the Bible. And also, another thing to consider, you have a real serious population problem without the flood. If you track back at the current growth rates, even if you accommodate for plagues and Mongols killing everybody and whatever, if we drop the population typical growth rate to a quarter of what it has typically been, and we go back 10,000 years, 50,000 years, you cannot hold all those people on the earth and feed them all. There has to have been a major depopulation event.
I have a question. You understand that the growth rates now are much better because we've industrialized and commercialized food, right?
What's the argument?
That the growth rate then wasn't the same. Now that everybody could eat, like the baby boomer generation, and everybody had food in the house.
Even if you accommodate for all of that, if you decrease the birth rate now,
the baby survived instead of like
75%
dying off.
You're both
we have comparable growth rates to antiquity in places where survival is very, very difficult. We have modern places.
There's nowhere that's comparable because we don't have constant conflict so much between different regions.
Yeah, there's countries where they're wiping each other out, and the baby's mortality.
Hold on. Not historically
super high, and other stuff.
Not even close to historical. Like 2,000 years ago, there was wars between regions constantly. Now we really have one, and it's a big deal. Like Russia versus Ukraine, it's a huge deal right now. Before, like 2,000 years ago, just every region would constantly be fighting and warring with each other.
You're telling me in the last 200 years, we haven't seen any countries anywhere in the world.
No, I would point to probably
just wiping them all.
I'm sorry. I think that you're kind of distorting my view. I think I'm really just pointing to post World War II, where we sort of solidied about.
I'm talking about population data,
right? But we're usually using population growth post World War II when our records are a lot more.
So you agree that Sumer existed, right? The Sumer civilization.
This problem with plagues and wars and everything else.
Hold on.
Would be way too many people on the planet.
Did you have something back for share screen, Gnostic?
Yeah, pull that up. This is the census. This is an estimation based on archaeology, based on digs of what happened to my screen. Oh, based on digs like Sumer, for example, the Aegean was populated, Crete was populated. We know that there's literally cities. Jericho's a city at this time. There's all types of places. We have a population estimate based on the evidence that there was 27 million people living on the planet known to us right now in 2000 BCE. And this Noah's flood, I did the math in the beginning, you can't get anywhere outside of 3000 or 2000 BCE if you do the math according to the Bible. So you're saying 8 people populated the world to 27 million.
Wait, what was the population?
Hold on, Gnostic. This is fake. It says 10,000 BC, and we know that the world is only 4,000 BC.
Ah, you got me. But I'm just saying, if we're going on the evidence, how the hell, if the archaeologist is true and the evidence points to this population, how the hell did 8 people make the world populate into all these gigantic city-states within a couple of generations?
And what's the population now?
Wait, I do have a question, Uncle Doug. How old is the Earth?
However old God says it is.
Okay, so 4,000 years old?
Or wait, not 4,000. Nobody
6,
says 4,000.
6,000. I apologize. It's 6,000 years old.
Well, technically, the Bible says the earth became shapeless and void, so it existed before time recorded. So we don't really know.
Without people, though.
Something was there before the first day and night.
Without people, though. Well, we could find evidence of people, like Göbekli Tepe, for example, it was like 10,000 BC. What do you think about Göbekli Tepe? Is it fake?
Well, it doesn't technically say without people. It just said became shapeless and void. So we don't know what happened technically.
Well, no, it actually says Adam's the first created man. Is that true or not?
Yeah.
First created like Homo sapien.
Wait. Okay, wait. This is the weirdest argument because you have to concede, right? That like when it comes to historical records, hold on, just listen to my question for a second.
He doesn't concede. Why do I got to concede?
Fair. You don't have to do shit. I have a question for you. Do you concede this? Do you concede that historically speaking, every historian on planet fucking Earth?
No, automatically not. Automatically, that's a lie.
Do you want to finish it?
99.999%.
No,
okay,
no.
whatever. I'm gonna say it. Believe
majority,
that the Earth is
with majority. You can say majority and it'd be
finish
true.
it.
Majority.
You can say most.
Okay.
But you can't say all.
Seem to be getting the hang of the
Large-
over-talking thing.
Yeah.
you can't size up for that.
Thank
He
you.
figured
I'm
it out.
trying. Trying
All
to
right,
fit
good,
in,
He
man.
figured it out. Finish
Find
the
my
thought.
place.
I'm gonna
Hunter.
say 99%, rounded down. Okay, 99% of historians agree that the Earth is longer than 4,000 years old. It's like what? I don't even know.
You keep changing numbers.
Sorry,
No, I don't agree.
I don't fucking know. I don't know. 6,000 years old.
I don't agree.
You don't agree that that's
99%
historians'
believe that.
perspectives? That there are civilizations that we can date that are 10,000 years old?
I don't think they're 10,000 years old. I don't
Right,
think
but
they're
do
that
you?
old.
No. I'm not asking whether or not you think that. I'm asking, do you agree that historians think that?
Oh,
Largely
sure.
speaking.
Yeah,
I would
So
agree
it
with
feels
that.
weird that
Agree.
we're asking about the historicity of an evidence when it seems like you reject historians' consensus.
Yeah, but Hunter, some of those civilizations though that we brought up once again, and this is like the ancient kings list kind of problem. Some of those like Sumerian kings, some of them like the Egyptian kings. I could look at maybe a couple other. They go back 1,400 years, like not 1,400, 14,000 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like those would arguably go back. But then what we have the same problem. We get to like the old pre-dynastic fucking shit that like in Egypt, and it goes back like 8,000-9,000. Then some of these kings live fucking for 2,000 years, right? And so I mean maybe not 2,000, but hundreds of years, right? And so it's like, okay, why in this case does it prove your point? But then when we bring the same argument up, to disprove ours? Like, okay, you
Because-
either accepting these
not-
civilizations. Hold on, these civilizations either track it back all the way back to these pre-dynastic, like I don't know, Nephilim or whatever civilizations, or like ancient kings, whether the gods like coming
Yeah, that's
back,
a good
they
question.
go back this far, or like now. And I would argue that yeah, I don't agree that it was probably these guys living for 600 years. I would argue that they had some kind of different understanding of what a year was. Maybe they wrote it down differently, or it was part of a myth.
Totally.
But there's something based in history that's going to cause
100%.
you to go back this far, right? And
Yeah.
that's why I said earlier, 6,000-year-old Christians are idiots. Like,
Sure. The issue here is that the reason why we know that these civilizations are 10,000 years old isn't because they wrote in their fucking journal, 10,000 BC. Okay. That's not how we know that. There's carbon dating. There's ways to check whether or not how old these civilizations are. Now, I'm not an expert in this. I'm sure that I can go find out how specifically these archaeologists are able to date this. But they do date this not through the facthood of the journal keeping, but by the
No, they
rocks and the
guess.
textures and the.
No, they don't.
Okay, sure.
they
There
do.
are guesstimates, but it's within a margin of error that is never within
like
6,000
100,000
years.
yeah, but well, okay. So let me ask you a question: why do we have coca plants in Egyptian tombs if there was no pre-trade with the like Americans, right? Like, so this is the same kind of thing.
Rich people
Like,
like cocaine.
sure, but the coca only grows in where? Like South America, right? So how the fuck did they get coca plants in Egyptian tombs? How do we have examples of tobacco in Egyptian tombs? So are we just saying like there are history, but we don't understand how
I don't
shit's
even know if
not
that's
here.
true. First
The
of all,
issue with
We-
this
I can-
debate
all right,
is like
well,
you
another way.
could just say anything,
yeah.
and it's like I don't know how to take this one step at a time. Like, because it does feel like we just jump from point to point when it doesn't, like, instead of just honing in on one point. I don't know about those cocoa plants. I've never heard of this. Okay, I'm sure that maybe it was confusing to historians until they figured it out, or maybe it's still a question mark. Okay, maybe we're just using God of the gaps arguments. I don't know. Can we hone in on one argument?
Pre-dynastic, there's pre-trade before we know. But like,
But
once
Gibbs,
again,
you also concede that the Earth is 10,000 years, or sorry, is like what is the actual Earth age of the Earth? I don't know.
billions of years old.
6,000.
I know.
I just wanted to see
4
if
billion.
there with your argument, Gibbs. There's an
Incredible.
argument to be had that that the pyramids and all those in the tombs, things like that, it was built during an Egyptian wet period. We don't really know what they grew.
So there could have been coca other places.
Yeah, why don't we just do that? Why don't we just make up things and then you have to go fact check them?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just
What?
pointing out historical examples
Actually,
that we
they
have.
did trade with them. Actually, there was.
I would argue they did have
trading
trade.
that happened.
Well,
We don't
I
have
would
evidence for that, but I could.
Well, I would
find
hold on.
something.
I would argue that this kind of like leads, and like I know I'm going to say something, and Austin's going to fucking snap here, but I like this is kind of like the same thing that Randall Carson keeps saying on all these fucking ancient myth things, where it's like, oh, you look at these things, there's clearly some sort of history that we don't understand. We're seeing more and more where like there's either maybe it's not a pre-dynastic or not like maybe it's not this like worldwide civilization that's got nukes or magnetism or whatever, but we're obviously seeing that there was some sort of like trained civilization that was before like what the agreed history is. You bring up Göbekli Tepe, right? People said like 9,000. Used to the standard was about 9,000 years ago. We started getting where you have like farms and shit, and now we're seeing Göbekli Tepe where the history goes, well, if these guys are all just farm like nomadic grazers or farmer or like hunter gatherers, why are they building monuments to Göbekli Tepe? We're seeing examples over and over again where history goes back further than we think, and I actually think this proves biblical myths in some regard.
Because you're saying
Göbekli Tepe scholars, PhDs.
You're saying look, sometimes
it goes back further than 10,000 years, right?
By the way, Randall Carlson is the same guy who said that the word Levite in the Bible, which is a Semitic word in Hebrew, means levitate, which is a word that comes.
Yeah, well, I don't agree with everything he says. I'm just using it as an example. Like, I think there is something here with this idea that there were civilizations older than 10,000 years, and there was some sort of catastrophe that like just wiped out a majority of them. I don't know if it's one civilization or it's 50, but I think there's plenty of evidence starting to come up that there was something going on more than just hunter and gatherers 10,000 years ago. And I really don't know if that's like even really that widely a controversial thought now at this point. And if that is true, then that leads to the credence that Bible is real history because it mentions a lot of this stuff in reference to it. And I think this is, once again, even if they're getting told this stuff at a later date, they're referencing real events, which is real history. Just like with Troy, we use the mythology of Troy to find Troy. Like we're finding these over and over and over. We use myths to discover the history. That is real history. I don't understand why y'all disagree with that. Do you disagree with that? Like,
well, the Younger Dryas theory is actually widely rejected by most scholars in that field. They don't think that there was some impact.
The guy that did the pyramids is like also got like all sorts of stuff that like is not based on total, like modern Egyptology is not based on like anything like concrete either. So like all of this is theory. Like I mean, I'm open to being changed. We don't have an example of macroevolution, but I believe evolution happens. Do you disagree with the theory of evolution?
You're missing the motivation. There is a very weird survivorship bias that's happening here, where you're recognizing that some myths do get confirmed sometimes because people are motivated to look where there's there's societal pressures for, you know, someone is like, oh well, I heard about this myth, I want to go see if that's accurate. So yeah, we would see some myths confirmed, I'm sure, but that doesn't, you keep using that as a pivot point to say, well, then all myths are true. And that feels like a crazy leap to make.
I didn't say that.
Okay, sorry. That the Bible is true because other myths are true. Because sometimes we might look and see, I don't know what, like, it feels like a very strange tactic. Does that make sense?
Well, hold on. I think you're missing what I'm doing here. What I'm saying is that the Bible is real history. I think all religions are real history. I think, like, to some extent,
all religions.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay.
Scientology?
Yeah,
no. Sure, but like Islam that's a real religion.
Yeah.
You're saying these are the objective standards. This all comes from the mouth of God, and there would still be discrepancies. I get Gibbs' point, which is like these are different. You know, sure, you're going to mix up midday when specifically Jesus died. I get that. I guess maybe I don't even know if I can see that point. But to Uncle Doug, how could there be discrepancies if it is the word of God?
Because people.
Okay.
You look, a court case
Sorry,
court case last month may have come to the judgment that the guy was guilty.
Uh-huh.
But that doesn't mean all the eyewitnesses were perfectly in agreement on every detail.
So do you think that
or that it exactly represented how guilty he was or what was in his mind when he did it?
Sure.
And that's just that's not ancient history transcribed over and over from lots of sources or whatever. Like it or not, God has to work through with us. And we're the ones that describe for us the mind of Christ. And my argument, mind of God, my argument is we are ants in an ant farm looking at a giant face looking in, telling everybody we know what he had for lunch.
And
that's stupid. And that's religion.
Why
why be so dogmatic about it?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
But there's also thousands and thousands of Hindu gods. There's all kinds of Buddhists. There's all kinds of whatever, because there's all kinds of people that are full of pride and think they know best and that their opinion trumps everything and everybody. And that's just the human condition.
So why wouldn't you agree that it's at least a possibility that when the Catholic Church had like sole possession over the Bible, that they would be able to rewrite it?
That never happened.
There was
Ethiopian Orthodox, the Eastern Orthodox.
They're part of the same church, though.
Lots of people had canons. Lots of people had scripture.
Sure, but there was no ability ever to rewrite
the
it.
Gnostics. There's another one.
What ability to rewrite what?
rewrite the Bible. No. If you acknowledge that people are infallible and that God has to work through us, why then treat the Bible as infallible when it's been handled by humans for 6,000 years?
Well, for one, we have corroborating evidence. We have the Dead Sea Scrolls, and for a long time we thought that
those also have discrepancies.
We thought
thousands of discrepancies.
I don't get it. Like, I genuinely don't get it.
There are texts like the Book of Enoch in the Ethiopian Orthodox canon that everybody thought was twisted and made up, and it wasn't right. And then we find it in the Dead Sea Scrolls, accurately depicting what's in the Ethiopian Orthodox canon.
That's not what happened. That's not what the church says about Enoch. Enoch, they actually cite the Book of Jude cites Enoch and quotes it word for word. It's in the New Testament. They just thought that the authorship was dubious and it was a Hellenistic text, so they didn't include it in canon. They still the Enoch was still passed around in Greek sources and was still preserved in different versions.
And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have confirmation that the one in the Ethiopian Orthodox was accurate. There are others that are doctored up. There were others that were fiddled with. We have so many different early fragments that we can compare and see, okay, that was added later. That doesn't belong. Right. Or whatever.
Sure, but wait,
more than any other history events.
I think you're maybe dodging my question, and maybe I can reframe it just to make sure that I'm really honing in on it.
The Bible is
why couldn't I say
wanted it to be?
No. Right. You keep saying that, and that feels confusing because you also acknowledge that humans are infallible and they're passing through their hands. So here's my question. I'm going to frame my question specifically like this. Couldn't I make the argument that God spoke to Moses and Moses actually misunderstood because he's a fallible human, and God was trying to tell a metaphorical story about how the world came to be, and Moses, like an idiot, because he's a dumb human, he wrote, "Oh, got it. So it was made in a week," right? And he wrote it down like an idiot, even though God explained it to him. Why couldn't that?
Totally could.
That happen? Okay.
And
so it
God
feels.
would have known that that's how Moses was going to take it, and God would have known that that's how Moses would have.
So why does God allow the discrepancies in the Bible in the New the New Testament, for example?
So you have a reason to give him the finger.
Sorry.
So you have a reason to give him the finger.
What?
This is so motivated. It's so like you start at your conclusion. It's so ad hoc. I don't know.
You can go through the text, go through the Bible. There's lots of places where he says, "I'm not going to give them ears to hear."
I agree.
I'm going to say it in riddles so that they will disagree. He sends prophets that are funny looking, that you want to cut in half, that wear leather,
bald,
whatever, that call people to repent. And it's easy to dismiss them.
So why would
churches look?
We've met a few of them this week.
There's churches I can't go to because I have a ponytail.
Let me ask you a question, Hunter, because you
have a beard.
Okay.
You brought up the bald thing.
Denominations of Christians.
I did bring.
I just want to ask you a question, Hunter.
It's
a good story. I like the Ehud story personally.
That one's great. The left-handed fucking.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. But like, let's
yeah,
it's a good story, right? Like, yeah, if you don't know that story, I highly recommend it. It's a good one. But like, so the bald one, right? Like, okay, let's just say hypothetically, I'm bald, right? And I'm bald, and you make fun of me, and then like the next week, all of a sudden, you get killed by some bears. Mm-hmm. Now, like, would you say that if I'm like, the religious leader of my thing, in my community, and I happen to be bald, and then you got eaten by a bear in the wilderness, or your kids did or whatever, that I would probably attribute that in the fucking ancient days to like, of course, God made it. Okay, so then you would argue it's not unrealistic for the idea back when they were like had way more wild animals. We know there were lions in Europe, for example, but there are no lions now. That the lions ate people in Europe back in the day.
I want to pause. I want to pause you real quick. I want to make clear my stance. Maybe Gnostic disagrees with me on this. I do believe that almost all of the authors of the Bible were earnest, that they genuinely believed that Jesus was God, when we're talking specifically about the New Testament, or that the prophet really did this, or that the prophet really did that. I do believe that there are, for the most part, and I really know the New Testament more than the Old Testament. I do believe they're earnest. I also think they're wrong. So like,
let me just add to that, because the New Testament is trying to tie itself to the Old Testament for the prophets, for example, the
Yes.
suffering servant, Isaac carrying his cross, carrying his wood to his own sacrifice. They're trying to use motifs from the Old Testament to apply to Jesus. So there has to be some creative level going on here.
Absolutely. The means justify the ends. A really good example is the flee to Egypt, that like Matthew invokes this Moses parallel to Jesus, even though Luke has a completely different story. It seems like they're motivated into claiming that they're definitely motivated writers.
So it's beyond just historical. This is what happened.
Yes, they believe God, Jesus is God. So I am going to essentially flub some details a little bit,
okay, I agree
just
with
to
that.
ensure that those.
So you don't believe the Romans crucified people?
No, of course I do.
And Psalm 22, where it says, "My bones are out of joint; they pierce my hands; they cast lots for my clothes."
I believe that Jesus was crucified.
Hold on. Do you know what? You want to know why? You know what that psalm's about? King Josiah was pierced and killed by a war that between the Hittites, the Egyptians were surrounding him like lions, like a pack of animals. Israel was surrounded, and
so it's prophecy.
Josiah was pierced and killed. This was written in the Psalms, and Isaiah wrote about it. Now this gets applied to Jesus later, but the original context was about King Josiah, who was an anointed king.
So it's prophecy.
That's that they're writing about. They're not writing about prophecy at that point. That psalm is about Josiah. It becomes a prophetic text later by the process of what do they call it when when they rewrite the stories into prophecy. You know what I'm talking about, right?
So it didn't apply to Jesus.
Not the original author.
So what's the difference? But God can multitask and say one thing and mean two things, and somehow
you can just say it's God then. But I'm telling you, the author had an original purpose to write about King Josiah being pierced and killed during a time when Israel was surrounded by their enemies.
And David wrote a bunch of the Psalms that sounded like what he was praying and what he was going through that also applied a lot to Jesus.
No, that's actually
he didn't know he was prophesying. He's just writing a lament about what he's going through. But
then we don't have free will. Then we don't have free will. This is all just a simulation. It's all planned from day one. That's basically what you're saying.
Not really, but we don't have a word big enough.
That's a big debate in of itself, right there. Free will versus like predestination. But I don't think that's what we're talking about today.
We agree that there are people that think the moon landing was fake.
Yes.
We agree that there's people that think the earth is flat.
Yes.
Even if they were a majority of people, that wouldn't make them right.
Correct.
So an appeal to how many people or how many scientists or how many whatever
Stop.
doesn't win a point just because they believe something. Charles Darwin said, if my theory is right, we're going to find lots and lots of fossils of in between cats and dogs or whales and people. And we don't find those. They should be disproportionately way more than the fixed ones we find now.
Hold on.
I actually brought that up. A little bit ago. We didn't really dive into it, so that's a good example. Like I believe evolution is probably like a fundamentally sound theory, right? We see examples of microevolution over time, readily, right? And we don't see the macro, or we haven't at least found the large macroevolution to the extent that people. Okay, can you get give me an example of we see it over time. I think the micro, we know that whales were originally land animals, right? And we see the evolution from the original animal, but we don't see I don't know, the rat from that list that used to live in the Cretaceous turning into a monkey. We don't see that. And I'm sure
we have a pretty strong.
Hold on, let me finish. Well, hold on, let me just finish. And the reason for that is probably because the way fossilization works is you have to meet a very certain criteria for it to fossilize, and it's very unlikely that every single one of these large step kind of evolution things met the criteria or was in a place where they could get fossilized, whether it be a tar pit, whether it be fat frost or freezing. Hold on. No, I'm not wrong. I mean, I'm actually arguing on your side on this point. But my point is there criteria that you have to meet for something to fossilize, right? You have to either be in a region, you have to be flash frozen, and so a lot of these cases, since they didn't meet this criteria, we're not going to find it. However, I don't think that disproves evolution as a whole, right? I also don't think that makes me not a Christian, because I believe that evolution works because God works in mysterious ways. If you have the power to make a self-sustaining environment, then evolution is probably by His hand, right? And I don't see that is like like against my Christian beliefs, like in any form or way. And I think that this is kind of like when you say what is literal, and we talk about what is real history. Like I think that you have to once again look at what this is overall. And whenever I can point to multiple examples from the Bible, and then we find historical evidence of something similar or something almost identical, or like yada yada yada, then it just proves that the Bible does exist in a historical capacity. How many times we looked up someplace and we gone and dug there, and they find evidence of archaeological evidence of people living there and being there in this time period over and over and over again. Like, I don't know, are you disputing that?
I think that you're equivocating here on what specifically we mean when we say that Bible is true. And like I've said, I would concede a fair bit of historicity when it comes to the Bible. Not a fair bit, but certainly a meaningful percentage. I would definitely say that Jesus was a figure. He was crucified. I would definitely say that there was likely a regional flood in the region. I would probably agree with your assertion that Sodom and Gomorrah probably, that those were real cities and they probably got destroyed, whether it was a fucking avalanche or whatever. I don't know. But like, I agree with all of these points. But that is not the conversation we are having today. That is a reasonable, fair interpretation of the Bible, but that is not the conversation we're having. We're saying, is it historical? All of the claims, including like that Jesus rose from the dead. That's a big one. That's one that I thought we were going to be focusing on today. That Methuselah was 950 years old. Whatever. I could go down the list of all of the different historical claims. And I think, Gibbs, you would probably say that those are metaphorical, which again, sounds like you're just a Christian who's on our side. And sorry that this actually is end up being a 4v.
No, that just means that you're on my side because I am just like an intelligent. But
you're not with Uncle Doug.
All right, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. I see your thing backstage, Gnostic. I'm going to bring that up in a second. We're going to wrap this up in about 5 minutes. So try to get to the end of this talking point. We're not going to start any more new points. And then we will do closing thoughts. And then, of course, we will open up the panel for Q&A. If you are interested in joining the open panel, keep an eye out on the live chat. I will be dropping that link into the live chat for you to click and head backstage. Okay, Gnostic, go ahead to here.
So real quick, I just wanted to, this is just a quick little, to go back to what you said about evolution, there are actual peer review articles, when you're talking about evolution 101 here, showing transitional fossils. They do exist. That's this idea that there's no transitional fossils is just not true. But I wanted to, the thing I really wanted to talk about real quick is this idea of people writing prophecy about Jesus and not knowing this. I mean, so one of the major ones is about this anointed that will be cut down. Coming from Daniel. But when you a lot of times people take the quote out of context, say, oh, an anointed will be cut down. It's about Jesus because Jesus is anointed. He's the Messiah. But if you actually read what's going on here, it talks about a ruler comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. It will be rebuilt, streets in a trench. In the times of trouble, the anointed will be put to death and will have nothing. The people of the ruler who will come to destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end will come like a flood. War will come, and the desolations have been decreed. He will confirm a covenant for many, middle of the 7. He will put an end to sacrifice and offering. Like Jesus didn't do any of this stuff. This is about Antiochus IV in around 163 or 170 BC, something like that. And there's clear context. You can keep going to the next chapter where it actually describes the abomination of desolation happening here. So there's clear context being written in these sources. We know what they're actually about, and Jesus does not match up to what the author is actually saying. There's only a few lines that people later took and apply it to Jesus because he's because they call him an anointed one. So here's the one that says right here about the abomination of desolation. Where is it? Am I in the right spot? Anyways, yeah, you get my point. You get my point.
Jesus caused the sacrifices to cease.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
No, he didn't. The sacrifice kept going until 70 AD.
It was never received. In the Jewish temple.
What?
Listen to me. On Yom Kippur, they picked 2 rams. They cast lots. One is the Azazel, is the sins of the nation are imputed to him and is sent off into the wilderness to die. The other one, the blood is sprinkled in the Holy of Holies. The priests take a white cord that's dyed red. They tie it around the Azazel and lead it off into the wilderness. If that cord, that piece that they left in the temple, turns white, then God accepted the sacrifice. The Jewish rabbinical text says after the curtain was torn and the death of Jesus,
that's not true at all.
Cord never turned white again.
You're full of shit, dude. That's not true at all. Show me your primary source.
Jewish writings.
That's not true at all. That's not true at all. Did you show on the Talmud? That's not true. No, I've never heard that in my entire life. You're the first person to ever say that. That's bullshit. Show me a source. That's not true.
Quote the rabbinical text, because that does feel very insane. That the Jewish rabbinical text would confirm the idea that Jesus was the Messiah.
And he said, "I'm going to tear this temple down." And in 70, he caused the
You are delusional. Sorry, this is delusional. That is not true. The sacrifices continued all the way till 70, and then only stopped because the Romans sacked them and destroyed their temple. It had nothing to do with Jesus. The Gospels were all written after this.
What the text says, the ruler's going to come and destroy it.
I'd love to see a source on that, because that feels very surprising to me.
It's not. It doesn't exist. Can you pull it up?
Let me fucking.
Yeah.
Just let me give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I don't even believe it.
Pull it up. But but anyways, Daniel even describes who this is going to be that's going to take away the sacrifices. He mentions him coming from the third kingdom, which is the Greeks. So he gives us so much context about why it's Antiochus IV, and then he says that this ruler will be he gives all the details. He'll set up an abomination inside the temple. The Romans never did that. Did Titus Caesar go in the temple and set up an abomination? No, that's what Antiochus IV did. So there's all these details in Daniel that have nothing to do with what happened in Jesus' time. And also another thing is, like, it says that the anointed will be cut down during the time when this is going on, not 70, 60 years, whatever, 40 years later after Jesus dies. There's no 40 years in there. So what happens is Christians are going, the authors of the gospel, maybe even after this, are going through the Old Testament, and they're kind of cherry picking verses and applying it to Jesus. And it doesn't match. It never fits perfectly. It's always something really cherry picked. Anyways, did you find that verse?
Yeah, he posted it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's in the private chat.
Okay.
So what? From the Babylonian Talmud, what passage? Just says from the Babylonian Talmud. 40 years before the destruction of the temple, the lot for the Lord did not come up to the right hand. The scarlet thread did not turn white. The western lamp did not stay lit. And the doors of the temple opened up by themselves. So you're saying this is the end of the sacrifice? Where is the sacrifice ending?
God stopped accepting it.
That's not true. The sacrifice kept going till 70 AD.
What's the point if God's not accepting it?
How do you know God's not accepting it?
Because the cord didn't change. Because that's the evidence that he accepts it. The crimson cord turns white. Supernaturally, over and over, it turned white. Over and over and over, it turned white.
Where does it say this? Where does it say this?
Right there in the thing. It said it stopped turning white. Before that, it was turning white.
First of all, no, it doesn't say that. You didn't even give me a passage.
I'm looking. I'm looking.
And it says the lot for the Lord did not come up in the right hand. The scarlet thread did not turn white. The western lamp did not stay lit, and the doors of the temple opened up by themselves.
Did you take all that time just to type into the side what you had just said? Only put from the Talmud.
I'm trying to find out. You just wrote Babylonian Talmud, and then this is what it says. I don't know what passage this is, and
I'm looking it up.
Okay.
AI Overview just says this passage is a direct quote from the Talmud, specifically in the tractates Yoma 39b and Rosh Hashanah 31b. It describes a series of ominous events that reportedly occurred for 40 years leading up to the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE. Maybe that's something
for the record. The AI Overview just quoted where to find it, by the way, if you read that part again. But that's not a huge thing.
So we're talking Yoma 6:8 Mishnah describes the ritual Yoma 39b. Which one is it? Yoma 39? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
All right, let's look this up.
While we're waiting, since I know that Hunter wanted to argue this is not a new argument, but this kind of goes to my whole point about history being interpreted a certain way. I'm going to tell you all a little case. Now, this isn't going to be a one-to-one example of Jesus because this man wasn't crucified, but Clairvarius Narcisse was a Haitian man pronounced dead in 1962 by a bunch of American doctors. And then he came back in 1980. They came back to life, allegedly, and he was apparently caught by some voodoo priestess that made him into a zombie. And they brought him back, and he came back. And then what we found out was later. Hold on. What we found out later was it was potentially, they're not 100% sure about how this happened, but I think maybe it has something to do with pufferfish poison that made him go to sleep and everybody think he was dead and he came back to life. And my point is, once again, Osiris is a good example of this. Dionysus is another good example. These are archetypes or types of pre-Jesus characters that rose from the dead and then interceded on behalf of their people for the underworld. And we see this over and over and over again. So it's not a crazy stretch to me for somebody to think, oh, Jesus actually came back to life. Because there's potentially ways that we can see mythological examples, and we even have a modern example. And I specifically chose a modern example from the 60s to 80s, where we have someone that was confirmed dead by American doctors and still came back. I mean, so what y'all are saying, it could be historically true that he came back to life. We don't have the scientific explanation of why they think he was dead and he came back. Maybe the Romans didn't do a good enough job. Maybe he somehow healed in this 3 days because he was basically a Super Saiyan. I don't know, but the point is that things seem to be a recurring theme where hey, we point to history, we point to myth, and then we can find historical examples of where this seems to occur. And y'all really haven't disputed that. Y'all just said, oh, everything in the Bible is not 100% true, then it's all bad, which is, I think, ludicrous and ridiculous.
I think that's
the big problem is that the case that you're laying out would also apply to any good fiction written. So a good fiction is going to have things that the reader can associate with being as true and that they're able to identify with in order to make the book feel good and be popular, be captivating.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, and the problem is a lot of the missing pieces are the main fucking pieces. It's the other things this city's mentioned and they found this city. That's all fine and dandy. That's something that any author would do.
Before we forget about what was just said, because that was a huge claim, the Talmud is not saying that this doesn't even mention sacrifices. It's saying that they had omens that the end of their temple was coming. It does say 40 years prior. That's an interesting point. I'll concede that. We're talking right around this time. But it doesn't say anything about sacrifices no longer being accepted. It doesn't even mention sacrifices. It doesn't say Jesus is the reason why sacrifices ended.
Did you have this back? You want me to bring this up, Gnostic?
What?
Your backstage?
Oh, yeah. I'll just show in the actual passage. The sages taught during the time of God. It occurred occasionally. During the 40 years prior to the destruction, a lot for God did not raise. The high priest. So occasionally they would get these omens, and the western lamp of the candle did not burn continually. And they explain it. They say that this is a prophecy concerning the temple. Where is it? Just as the forest of Lebanon, just as the forest blooms, the temple blooms. When Solomon built the temple, he planted it in all kinds of sweet fruit. So they're talking about the temple, the doom of the temple. This is probably nonsense too. But
sure, it's still obviously ideologically motivated.
Exactly. You got a bunch of Jewish priests saying, we knew that the temple was going to just be destroyed. We got all these omens.
We got the omens for sure. Yeah.
So what's your explanation for how a crimson cord turns white sometimes?
I don't think that actually happened.
I think it's ideologically motivated.
Yeah. And you weren't an eyewitness, so we can't listen to you.
Neither were you. So neither were you. That's a stupid argument.
I didn't claim to be. I claim to know Jesus personally.
Okay.
And the difference between Christians, the Bible says that on primary things, Christ and him crucified, we have unity. On everything else, we show grace. I don't have to agree with Gibbs for Christianity to be right. We can disagree on whatever, broccoli or the moon landing or whatever. That doesn't change Christ and him crucified. And my faith is not in the Bible. The Bible didn't die on a cross for me. My faith is who I know, who is my Lord, who is a man of color that I'm a bondservant to and serve every day.
Interesting.
So that's a
but the debate was about the Bible.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's a good note to end on. Thank you, Uncle Doug. Let's actually maneuver into our closing statements. I'm going to, let's see, Gibbs, you ended on the last round. So we'll start with Gibbs, then Doug, then Hunter, Ben, and then Gnostic. You'll have the final word. Okay. Mr. Gibbs, if you could, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think my point here is that the Bible is a historical. The Bible is a historical document that we can use to prove history in multiple aspects. I would argue that once again, history is written by the victors, whether that's the victors through, other way military, whether it's the victors through culture, whether that's the victors through numerous other ways. And so I would like to say, once again, we can go look at all these historical sources, and we find similar sources in places like the New World where they didn't have a way to contact these people over here in the Middle East or whatever, and they have the same biblical stories like the flood, and they're very similar. They have overlapping themes. Maybe not every one of them is the exact same. Some are very similar though. We have similar names from societies that have different phonetic productions. We have all sorts of examples where these stories overlap. We have examples in China where it's similar. We have all these different things, and then we look at history. We do archaeological digs. We find these places over and over and over and over and over again. I would argue that this is based in history. Would I argue that maybe it's metaphorical, maybe it's allegorical, maybe it's all these different things? That's really not the point. The point is that it is based in history. All religion and really spirituality and even science is just the human trying to understand what they don't understand, right? This is history. This is kind of a key thing. And so when y'all are sitting here dismissing these out of hand, you go, oh, dumb Christians, 6,000 years. Sure, some people are fundamentalists. We got fundamentalists of every religion. I'm not one of those people. I believe in Christianity. I believe Jesus saved me and died for sins, all that good jazz. But at the same time, I think there's plenty of evidence to point to lots of historical figures. We have Herod the Great. We have Herod the guy, I can't think of the last name, with an A. We have all these other people that we can point to that existed in the Bible. The Hittites, they were argued not to even be an existing king for a while, and then they find the archaeological evidence of them. Same with Troy. Troy was argued not to exist. We can argue about whether or not that's a real thing, but over and over and over and over, we find examples of his cities and other places that happened, right? Where these things are over and over told, and then nobody believed them, and then we find the archaeological evidence for it. And then, like I said, we brought up Göbekli Tepe, and once again, I think this goes back to my overall kind of creation. It's amazing how these people on the other side have pointed to these things to say this disproves something, then use it as the same example when I've already used this, going, okay, this proves a creation myth, a flood myth. Göbekli Tepe talks about a flood myth potentially. That's one of the things they argue might be a thing, right, as well. So we're seeing all these examples of unexplained history that can only be explained by going back and looking at the mythology of these societies, whether that's Christian, whether that's Norse, whether that's Muslim, whether that's Chinese, all these different things. And I think this is important because I think not every religion, maybe not the Jedi and the Sith, I don't know, in Australia, but I think the rest of the religion, most religions have some sort of basis in reality. And I think to argue that it's not historic history is ridiculous and really just unfounded, and it's just kind of a bash on Christians as a whole, which is a problem.
Thank you, Gibbs. Uncle Doug, to you, please.
None of this is new. There are all kinds of reasons why. I read a story. I'm working on details out of memory here, and my hard drive isn't as fast as it used to be. But there were a team of archaeologists that found a city. All the non-Christians were interested in it. The one Christian guy said, "This is Jericho. There's 30-foot walls that fell outward. The Bible says they ran up into the city. This is exactly where Jericho should be." The non-Christian says, no, Jericho doesn't exist. It can't be Jericho. Crucified him, ran him completely out, questioned his credentials, ran him completely out of the science. Until later, turns out, you know what, it was Jericho. There's all kinds of reasons why people don't want to believe God, don't want to believe, want to find any possible reason. And I think it comes down to wanting to run your own life instead of let somebody else run it. Odin isn't telling you what to do. Jesus is. If you're really going to believe in Jesus, then you're going to do what he says to do. And a lot of people just don't want to, especially in America. Most of the people say they're Christians aren't. They look just like everybody else. And so my basis for faith in the Bible isn't the archaeology or the agreement of all the names. It's because it's true to me. Because God has shown himself to me over and over and over, more than I can tell you, more supernatural stuff. I've called strangers by name. I've seen people instantly healed. The Bible is true because God is true. And like I said, because, demons don't run when I invoke Thor or Odin or somebody else, Krishna. Anyway, so I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Have you ever tried?
Oh, hold on. It is closing.
Yeah, I tried. I pray, Sarah, that God would bless your show. And I pray that everybody watching would find truth, the real capital T truth, not just whatever's true to you. Everybody has their own truth, but there is a big capital T truth in the universe.
Perfect. Thank you, Uncle Doug. I appreciate that. Hunter, to you, please.
Hi. So I wrote something up. I'm fine with people like Gibbs's compatibilist approaches to Christianity. I have nothing against religious folks. My entire family's religious, and a lot of them have these ideas about how the mythologies aren't true literally, but they clearly speak to something true about the human condition. I make my peace with those Christians for sure. But one of the most interesting things about one of the most interesting things about fundamentalists like Doug, however, is that they seem to assert that they have to know that the Bible is true because God wouldn't let it be ruined. And how do we know that God exists? Well, it says so in the Bible. This is all still bypassing the whole issue, which is that the Bible has never asserted once that the Bible itself is infallible. Look, Uncle Doug, I'm not trying to stomp on your religion, but I think it's rather telling that you agree that there are discrepancies in the Bible, but they are only there to give people a reason not to believe it. Man, that is some motivated thinking if I've ever seen any. I'm Hunter Kozak. I make videos and do debates mostly on TikTok, but also I mostly talk about philosophy and linguistics and math and politics, not too much about religion. So if you're interested, give me a follow. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Hunter. Mr. Balderson, to you, please.
I think that I would have not gone as far as Neil, but I actually don't study in this area near as much as Neil. I actually enjoyed very much his take that the Old Testament is completely made up, and I would say obviously the New Testament was made up in order to quell the very savage Christians in Rome that were tearing apart his empire. And so one of the features of that's very drawing, and part of why it's proliferated so much, is the feature that you can be an awful person and still get the Willy Wonka pass as long as you're on Team Jesus, which takes in no personal accountability or any decency. Where Odinism, my actions on earth decide where my afterlife. So I can definitely see why weak people pick it, and there's a whole lot of weak people out there. And so the story caught on. It's a good story. Lots of good stories out there. Little Japanese kids know about the Marvel universe. Big deal. Good debate, guys.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Balderson. And Gnostic, final words from you, sir, and then we'll move into super chats and open panel.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. I just thought it was interesting. And Doug said, I pray this audience and panel finds truth, capital T. And then all in the same sentence says, I don't believe in the Bible because of archaeology and evidence. I believe in the Bible because God is true. So it's like, well, God is true because the Bible is true, and the Bible isn't true because of evidence. So I just thought that was interesting. I care about evidence. I care about what the facts on the ground, the data on the ground that we can touch, we can see, we can corroborate primary sources, that type of thing. And we didn't get into the Exodus, for example, like millions of people leaving Egypt, all this culture leaving Egypt and going into the desert and leaving no trace behind, stuff like that. The flood happening only a couple of thousand years ago, and the whole world restarting, but somehow there's all these gigantic city-states in that time period, millions of people. Those are the things I'm concerned about, and I agree that some people wanted to make it's all symbolism. It's all just symbolism. It's all just allegory. But if that's the case, then is the New Testament also just allegory? Did Jesus die on the cross for a bunch of mythology and allegory? And is he also an allegory? So like, it's either true or it's not. And if it's not true, then why should I follow it?
All right, perfect. I've got an echo coming back from somewhere. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm officially dropping the StreamYard link into the live chat. If you would like to come up for Q&A,
Nice.
please feel free to start heading backstage now. We are going to read the super chats in the meantime and respond to them kindly. And then we'll bring you all up here in just a second. Gentlemen, because there are quite a few on here, I do ask for more concise and fairly short responses to them so that we can move through quite quickly. If you want to have a little back and forth with them, go for it. I'm all for it, but we still want to keep the timing limited. All right. Constellation says with the big 20 over on Gnostic Side says Noah's flood didn't happen. Ringwoodite in the mantle can only be released through volcanic means, resulting in the heat problem. People in a wooden barge could not survive this. Too much geological activity in a short period. This is shots fired over at the Christian team. Did anyone want to respond to that?
It was covered in pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, once again, I would point to the fact that there is floodness worldwide from cultures that couldn't meet each other, and they have very similar overlapping. I mean, honestly, you know what? I'm gonna say something crazy. The Aztecs were right. Quetzalcoatl was Cortez. He was predicted. And you know what? I just like at this point, I don't know. Like, every myth is retold. History is cyclical.
Okay. Anyone else have a quick response to that?
I agree with you, Constellation.
All right. All right. Testicle Johnson, I love your name. And with the big 5 says, if Jesus is so great, then why is he dead? Checkmate, Theus.
I think that yeah, exactly. Like, Christians don't believe he's dead. I don't know if you don't know this about Christians. He's kind of famously still living.
Fair enough. That's a perfectly good answer. I'll leave it at that. Constellation says, and with the big 50, along the science front, Jews and Christians share a fatal flaw. Mankind is dome 6,000 years old. Some 6,000 years old. Here in Texas, we have human activity way older and all over the planet. There's no way all of our dates are in gross error. 6,000 years is childish. Shots fired again over at the Christians. If anybody wants to go ahead.
I'm going to really recommend, Sarah, that you get Kent Hovind on here. He would love to have this conversation, and I'm sure Gnostic would love to tear him into little pieces.
Hell yeah.
And I just had him on my channel last week, and we had a good talk. And I know that he does this and would be thrilled to come and share his arguments about why the Earth is young.
Oh, all right. Somebody.
I don't agree. I don't agree with that. So that's not all Christians. But go ahead.
It's debate, right? I mean, you want opinions, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's really a one-on-one. That would be less of a panel, where this is the Seriously Saturday panel show. That would be a one-on-one with Neil.
Whatever
I'll be
works.
down for that.
You don't got to worry about me, Papa. Jesus got my back.
Somebody in the chat that knows me, send me a DM to remind me to hit up Kent for that one, please. Thank you. Smill Still, I like that name. That's funny. With the big 5, this is why we need folks like Neil, because of all the, is that lying Christians? Lying?
Lying, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe it's leaning.
Leaning.
What a waste of $5. I'm sorry, man.
I wouldn't mind some lean.
No
by
one
the end
even
of this
knows
one.
what you're talking about.
Lean with it, rock with it. Constellation with the big 5 says the University of Iowa just debunked the latest claim of Noah's Ark. I feel sorry for people getting sucked into this nonsense. How dare you believe anything that has been debunked? Any thoughts to this?
I mean, show me the evidence, I guess.
What was their agenda? It always is. Who's it coming through? Why?
What if they didn't have an agenda? What if they actually wanted to do an analysis?
Then that would be part of finding out who they are, right?
Sure. University of Iowa. No, you don't have to accept it.
It wasn't the University of Iowa.
That's what he says.
The university didn't do a study. Somebody at the university.
That's what I'm saying.
Did a study and put the university's name on it.
That's what he's saying. He's saying University of Iowa.
Anybody.
Well, probably a professor with a PhD.
You can't test evidence unless you know who's behind it and what their point is. If they have an agenda or not. Maybe they don't.
Science doesn't care about your agenda.
Well,
Either you can produce results or you can't.
Oh, science doesn't have an agenda.
That seems like a little bit of a broad stroke. I
Yeah.
don't agree with that.
Take more COVID pills, buddy.
You can have an
Science doesn't have an agenda.
You reproduce or you don't.
No. But you could reproduce false, like some pretty falsifying evidence. You know that. Like famously, scientists and oil companies produced a paper that said, no. Like, I agree with you. This is why we look at the consensus of scientists and we don't just look at individual papers.
Sure.
Well, oil companies never did anything wrong with their science. Don't lie.
That's what I just said.
If I selectively ask only women about men's problems, there's definitely an agenda there. Dragon Fist with the Big Five says Gibbs is talking about the Durupiner formation. He didn't make it up. You didn't make shit up, Gibbs.
I know, and once again, I'll point out another example that we all thought was bullshit. This is from 1525. Francisco de Orellana. Whenever he traveled down the Amazon, he pointed out there was tons of cities with huge populations, and now and everybody thought he was crazy because nobody could find him. And now they've used LiDAR, and they found many of these cities actually did exist in the Amazon, and we think that there's able to hold a larger population of several million. Wait, are you disagreeing with the LiDAR in the Amazon finds? Okay. Okay.
The scholars are laughing at that stuff right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
None of it's peer
Dragon Fist is actually backstage, so he'll be able to come back up his claims here on the super chat. Lithia says, "Good on you, Gnostic informant. This is good practice for you to learn restraint and patience."
I failed.
Yeah, that must have happened at the beginning of the debate.
Yeah, I did not pass that test.
We'll work through it, Gnostic. Yeah. We'll work through it. It's okay. We got plenty more. It sounds like we got another debate coming up for you.
Those are fruits of the spirit in the Bible.
Yeah.
Ooh. Gypsy says, "For putting on an amazing debate, man. Charging you $10 for allowing me to listen to that man and making me dumber. This is all your fault."
Who is he talking about?
Gnostic. It must be Gnostic.
Yeah.
Well, this one came in over on your side, Gnostic. So he's blaming you for making him have to listen to supposedly dumb people. Constellation says, "Hearing this debate makes me feel good. I'm a man of physics and follow the data. The Christians here are suffering cognitive dissonance. I haven't even brought up the flat earth and dome cosmology. The Bible fails." Constellation has a lot to say. You can say it over on my side too.
Neither one of those are in the Bible.
The
flat earth and dome. That's people see what they want.
The firmament is the dome, and the flat earth is the earth with clay with as seal stamped into clay.
Yeah, it says it's held up by pillars in some passages.
I have a picture of Ezekiel's vision from the 1500s, and it's absolutely a flat disc held up on pillars with a dome, and it's actually polar rather than solar because God sits in the top. And the Polaris is there, and the other stars move around him, and the sun and moon are inside of that.
And there's plenty of other verses that don't describe it that way.
Mm-hmm.
People pick and choose. They're flat earthers. If they're flat,
I agree. There are discrepancies, and people pick and choose the things that they want from the Bible. I 100%.
Well, hold on. We had an example that right here just happened. I brought up the LiDAR studies in South America. I just posted 3 articles, one from Science, one from the Smithsonian, and one from NASA. That's their actual original study. All of them confirming that LiDAR is confirmed. All sorts of fucking cities in South America, and these are actual serious people, and they're still denying it. So even when you provide evidence,
hold on.
LiDAR does not go underground.
Said that LiDAR produced results in the Giza pyramids. And then the actual
those are different things. It's not LiDAR.
Openings that they went to go verify those results, they were wrong.
You say there's all right, Balderson. So I see that Gnostics that say that. Are you saying that Francisco de Orellana, when he just said the story, that it was all a myth and he just wrote it down in earnest, saying he saw these cities, and then when he do LiDAR studies, the Institute of Ecuador, NASA, and Science Magazine does all these different things, and they go and do it. You're saying that none of this is true and it's all fake news, and we have agreement sources for it.
They put out sensational.
What about you, Hunter? Do you agree with it, Gnostics?
Wait, hold on. You guys are.
Stop. I wanted to hear Ben. He was responding.
I'm saying they absolutely put out sensational news in order to draw attention to things to get funding. And then oftentimes those things aren't true. That my friend Jeffrey Drum, who's also we're trying to figure out a prompt for him, lives and just does nothing but study the pyramids in Giza and lives there. And absolutely the LiDAR in that they think things that they were saying underneath the pyramids, what could be verified was wrong. So why would we believe the things that can't be verified then?
They're fighting the literal cities in South America. Like, I don't know why this is even really, I can't believe this is even a debate. Like,
I feel like I'm being gaslit by both sides right now.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
wait, hold on. Is all Gibbs saying that one time there was a guy who went down a river and said, "Oh shit, there's cities there," and then
everybody said it was bullshit.
And then someone went down later, went, "Oh wait, shit, he was actually right the whole time." Of course that could have happened. Why is that so crazy that could have happened? To extrapolate that into the Bible being real feels like a crazy stretch. But of course, some mythologies can be confirmed. That's not a crazy leap to make.
But I'll tell you what the bullshit is. The bullshit is the scans aren't showing gigantic cities. It's showing like little structures here and there.
Okay, maybe.
People are extrapolating all this data that's not actually there.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Jim sends the big five. The ChatGPT bullies have met their match. Shame on you. Andy says, Gibbs, why do the similarities in flood stories prove that they are rooted in truth rather than prove that a story simply spread around the world?
Well, yeah, I kind of touched on this. A lot of these stories are like hundreds of years apart. They're also like different locations, thousands of miles. This is why I kept bringing up the New World. I brought up Hawaii. There's Polynesian similar myths. We have all these different examples over and over and over. What's that show? Everybody's seen it now, and I know I'm going to say it. People laugh. That Graham Norton's bullshit. He posted ancient history. A lot of that shit is bullshit. Like he obviously spun it a way that it would be like exciting for Netflix. I agree with that. However, when I go, hey, let's go look at all these different examples, and then I point to examples like the Spanish from the 1500s, and now where they wrote this down. And the Spanish had one goal. It was to conquer the New World, get gold and shit. There's no reason for this guy to lie. In fact, he was arguing we should go back to these cities later and conquer them and get shit out of them. And when they couldn't find him, they're like, this guy was full of shit. And so when we're now discovering maybe he wasn't full of shit via LiDAR and archaeological evidence from multiple independent sources like Ecuador, like NASA, like all these things, I think it helps prove the Bible whenever you sit here and see, oh, there's some sort of like flood event that happened worldwide that all these different people have, and y'all are going, nah, dismissed. Like, and I think that's a little bit ridiculous. And like, especially if you're going to say that the world is older than 6,000 and older than 10,000, and then point to Göbekli Tepe and some of these other examples where we have these historical examples that we don't have evidence for why. I think the age of humans building structures is going further and further back. I don't know why that's going to be this.
Real quick, the LiDAR scans are showing structures that are from 600 CE and 300 BC. It's not going back to the pre-flood times. So your LiDAR scans that you're citing,
hold on, that's not what I'm saying. These are two comparable things.
Okay, my bad. I thought you were saying the same thing.
No, I was using the Spanish example.
Stop. Literally, you're all talking at once. Ben,
I didn't say anything.
Except for you, Hunter. You've been such a dull and little gem all night. Ben, I heard you say something. Gnostic, I heard you say something. Gibbs, I heard you say something. Doug, I don't know. Did you say anything? Okay. All right. Let's start with Ben, Gnostic, and Gibbs. You finish it out, and then we'll move forward.
You keep mixing up floods worldwide with a worldwide flood. The worldwide flood, again, would include everything, including the highest mountaintop, and only the people on the ark surviving it. And then you make it into this entirely different thing, which nobody's arguing that there's floods everywhere in the world.
Gnostic?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the scans thing, like I'm not saying there's no truth to there's no usage of these scans, and I know they're still being like people, you don't understand them that much as a new technology, but like from what I've gathered from experts I've talked to, it can only do so much. It can only like look at from the top bird's eye view. It can't really tell us what's below. And there is truth. There is some truth to the idea that they did discover structures in South America, but these structures were like from like 300 AD and 300 BC region. So I was
right. I actually don't dispute that. When I was the flood myth is a different point than the myth. The point that I'm making here, the point that I'm making now is there's a conquistador that went down the Amazon and he saw a bunch of cities, right? And Doug brought up, why did he do this? Well, they obviously wanted to conquer shit. And so when he came back and they couldn't find the cities, they called him crazy for 100 years. Now 500 years later, we're using LiDAR to discover, oh, this guy actually told the truth.
Of course that happened.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is this is a similar thing that happens to our history. Is people will tell something And then they'll say like either in earnest or in myth, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, that's bullshit. And then we go back and we use modern technology to prove it. And this is a different point than all these different societies having the flood myth. I feel like maybe that got confused in what I was saying there. Okay.
All right, last thought to Doug, then I'm moving to the next one.
I'd like to respond to Ben. Your argument that the flood had to be higher than Everest, and then your argument that there's oysters the size of your head on Everest because of tectonic shift. If the flood caused tectonic shift, then it could have been flatter before the flood and created those mountains, not had to have been higher than those mountains to begin with.
The flood created tectonic shifts?
Absolutely would have.
Where do you think the tectonic plates are? They're below the ocean.
Let's put a pin in that. We'll save it for open panel. I'm 100% sure that's going to come up.
Not if the ocean was over your head.
Constellation says, Doug, I need Constellation to be a friend of mine too over here on this side of the Mater house. Doug didn't bring up the fact that the scientific community does not support human tracks in the Paluxy River. Cretaceous limestone also argues against. Plus, the museum there believes in a solid crystal dome cosmology. Completely ridiculous. All right, who's got the first thought?
Do I get any of that $50?
I know. I wish it was on my side.
YouTube did half of it. So there's only 25. There's only 25 left over from you after YouTube.
Yeah, Gnostic's getting
ain't
all
no
the love
kidding
tonight.
about that. He ain't lying.
Yeah, they hit us pretty hard.
That's really all of them are bad like that. They take like a huge percentage, and it's listen. That's what we need to get regulated, guys. We need to get the government to come in and regulate us streamers getting more money.
We're like little slaves, huh? We're little content slaves. All right, I want to hand it out to each one of you if you have something to add in on this. Let's start with Ben. Any thoughts?
No, that was pretty well stated. And I do. This guy must be on the Ken Ham thing with the dinosaurs on the ark and all that. That shit's hilarious.
Fair enough. Gnostic, any thoughts to you so far on this one?
I think Constellation's bringing fire tonight, dude. Couldn't agree more.
Should have had Constellation on the panel. Gibbs to you.
I don't know anything about that, so I can't speak to something I don't know about. So sure.
All right, Uncle Doug.
A Gnostic would probably say that what the reality matters and what people believe about a dome doesn't make any difference as to what's actually in the limestone. So you got to separate the beliefs of the museum from what's actually in the rock and really look at the actual facts, not people's opinion about the facts.
Sure.
Okay.
I do want to throw out that I think it's interesting how interested Doug is in motivated reasoning for historical evidence, but not maybe for biblical writers.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Solar Knight says history does not exist other than a stubbornly persistent illusion. We all live with within a fast-moving time continuum within an ever-expanding universe. Why did he put a question mark at the end of that? Interesting. All right. Little Wing says, give a source from before the Brits arrived in Hawaii in the 1700s that Polynesian people in Hawaii had those stories. Also, the Polynesians could have picked up flood stories before leaving Southeast Asia. Gibbs, I'm going to let you answer this. We'll move forward.
Yeah, I mean, just look up the whole Lost Continent of Mu, and that's your Polynesian flood myth right there. And I think that there's probably plenty of evidence that there was some sort of flood in this region, whether or not it's what y'all want to call a biblical flood or not. I think that there's at least evidence of worldwide flooding where we have certain lost continents per se. And when I say lost continent, I don't necessarily mean Atlantis, they had nukes, but I do think there were probably societies in these areas that had to flee due to flooding and whether it's tectonic change, whether it's the Younger Dryas. I think there's just too many stories that have overlap with similarities where these people had to leave. And there's plenty of evidence the Polynesians having similar stories to this that are European contact. And also one other issue, Little Wing, that I can't really have, is you're going to hate this answer, is oral tradition is one of the biggest issues when we go and record Native Americans and some Polynesian, is because they use oral tradition passed down. And as we all know, it's like a game of telephone. Things, some change. But when you only have oral tradition, it's hard to actually like go and like prove this because they're, oral. They're not written down. And that's a major issue going forward. And so like, I know that's a cop out up to some extent, but it is an issue that archaeologists and historians deal with on a regular basis.
Gibbs has issues with oral.
Let me tell you, that is not a problem.
I'm going to kind of run through these fives just for time consumption, and then we'll respond to the other ones. Dragon Fist says Gibbs is citing archaeological evidence, and you just keep saying he's not citing evidence because you are not familiar with it. Shots fired. Little Wing says ancient world trade does not prove the Abrahamic religions and the Yahweh God is true and real. Jim says myth is only seen as history to the civilizations that use them, but not from the outside. A Little Wing says, I agree with Richard Carrier and Adam Green. Jesus is myth created by Paul. I think we have someone who thinks Paul was not an apostle. That would be an interesting debate to kick into. J-Doc says Jesus is a complete literary construct from OT scripture and prophecies. Be sure to pick up a copy of the Jesus Deception. Ooh. Dragonfist says, Doug, you are holding your own for sure. Great job. I will be there for open panel and I'm bringing evidence. Yes, he's sitting backstage. He's wet. He's ready. Little Wing says, Troy existing or Atlantis is a far cry from Jesus being God or the Abrahamic myths of Yahweh being true and real. Jim says it's in Timaeus. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Timaeus.
Okay.
Timaeus. It's the Plato. This was a conversation about where specifically Atlantis was found.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah,
it's a Platonic dialogue.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. It's in Timaeus, which reads as a follow-up to the Republic. Thank you so kindly. Constellation says, last thought. No, it's not your last thought, Constellation. You still have plenty more. The creator of the universe can't have books written without contradictions and didn't allow the originals to survive. Plus, the later editions like Mark 16, 9 through 20, not trustworthy. Any thoughts? Gnostic smiling. What you got?
So what he's pointing to is, so Mark is the first gospel ever written, according to most scholars. There are some that think Matthew might be the first, but the consensus is majority is that Mark is the original. For a number of reasons, it seems like Matthew and Luke are borrowing from Mark in certain spots. Yeah. Anyways, 16, 9 through 20 isn't present in any of the earliest manuscripts all the way up until like 400 AD, like the 5th century. So when you start getting the later, the part, and what is 9 through 20? 9 through 20 is literally Jesus' physical resurrection. So Mark ends abruptly with an angel at the tomb telling the women that he does say he is resurrected, but they don't actually see him. You don't actually know where he is. They say, go to this place and you'll find him. And it ends abruptly. So a lot of people have pointed out, that's interesting that the first time the gospel is ever told, they don't have a physical resurrection of Jesus. It's just they're just told that he resurrected. I think that's a very strong point.
Awesome. Any other thoughts to that? All right. Dragon Fist with Big Ten says 90% of discrepancies in the Dead Sea Scrolls are one-letter differences or a different word for and or a. Most of these discrepancies can't even be translated.
What about those
fired.
Other 10%? That's all I have to say.
And that's not what Kip Davis says, and he has a Nobel Prize for translating the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah. No, but I'm sure that you can, through certain translations, if you try to match them, it's like, oh, this one said and, because they're different translations, of course. But
he says they're polytheistic.
The 10% discrepancies are pretty key and critical to our conversation.
All
yeah,
right.
you're talking about the discrepancy. Yeah, Kip Davis would say there's like thousands of discrepancies. Some of them are more major than others. Most of them, I admit, are just minor little spelling differences. Most of them.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, Andrew is backstage, or Dragon Fist, so he'll come talk about it. I'm sure some more. And Reap and whatever it is, Andre says, question to Doug. Doug, shots to you. Is the Bible literally 100% true with no exception, not even a slightest flaw? Quick answer.
Which Bible? You know, the original texts are what God wanted written down and what he provided for us. And there's reasons for all of that. I got issues with the King James. I got issues with the NIV, the whatever, stuff like that. I'm not willing to point to any one of the English translations and say that's literally perfect.
Can I respond?
That's a way to think about things.
Yeah.
Why would God allow the King James version, which is the most proliferated version, the translation? Why would he allow that to be such a mistranslation? Why would he allow that to be slightly inaccurate? Because you have disagreements with it. Why would?
Well, my disagreements with King James. The King James is almost exactly the Geneva Bible, without the subnotes and footnotes the Geneva Bible put in there about how kings and popes ought not to reign. The King James hated it, and he went back, had his scholars redo it all, which was almost exactly the Geneva Bible, except he made changes himself, like Titus 3:1, where it says, "Be ready to obey, teach them to obey, and be ready for every good work." And he put, "Teach them to obey magistrates and be ready for every good work."
Right, but that couldn't happen before we have record of it occurring.
It's not in any fragment anywhere the word magistrates there. And other places where he inserted his focus was to get people to obey kings, like Romans 13. It's not about civil governments. He said obey civil governments.
I'm just trying to point out that I think it's interesting that you agree that there are people who have motivated changed the Bible, but those people are just not the authors of the Bible. But God, because God wouldn't allow the authors to have miswrite some of the historical evidence, but he would allow a mistranslation. Like, what is the meaningful difference between those?
Here's the fundamental difference between me and all of you guys. Okay. I'm not focused on the dirt, on what's written, on human history, on what people said. I'm focused on the supernatural.
But you are, because you claim that the earth is 6,000 years old. That's a claim to the Bible. That's a claim to the word that says, here's when, you know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't seem like you're interested in the supernatural. It seems like Gibbs is interested in the supernatural. He's like, well, some of this could be metaphor. I don't know. I just know God's real.
The metaphor is not supernatural. Metaphor is linguistic, literal, literary, whatever.
Okay.
I'm not talking about
if
that.
You're going to just call it an occult book, fine.
I'm not calling it that either.
What the fuck?
I'm saying that God is supernatural. What he does is supernatural. We are not supernatural, and it's really, really hard for us to understand it, and we don't even have language to describe. I don't believe in free will or predestination. But
so then why be dogmatic about Christianity at all? If we're just ants, we can't understand what's going on in this universe, then why even have a strong opinion on it,
Did you turn your volume up? You came in like really high on that one.
I don't know why. It's weird.
It was like woo hot.
Oh, I just leaned in.
We're not going to stop having ant brains. We're going to have ant brains, and we're going to understand what ants understand. And we're going to do the very best we can to get our head around things that are bigger than ourselves. As he reveals them to us. And the Bible is part of that, but he can talk to you personally and explain things to you personally. And I know that I'm wrong about a bunch of stuff. And whether I'm right or wrong doesn't change him.
Okay.
Oh, and Ben hurt my feelings.
Oh, Ben, you big meanie.
And I would like to correct him.
You should definitely not have picked that fight with all the times you brought up Odin. I was going to be like real, just
well, I don't
scholastic about it, but you brought it up too many times.
I don't get to hurt
your
feelings.
When the gauntlet comes out, oh, it's going to hurt.
It'll be fine. Okay. All right, let's move forward. Everybody's happy, everybody's healthy, everybody's alive, and we're all here to share our opinions. Coriolis says, good talk, everyone. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so kindly to all the gentlemen who are here and the panelists backstage waiting to come on and shake it up a little. Constellation, I told you it wasn't your last one. Homework assignment, GW170817, creation of heavy elements like gold. There's your homework assignment. Everyone go look that up, whatever it may be. Ben, I think did this come in on your side, Ben?
I don't think
okay.
so.
Yeah.
Nice.
The big 200. Man, everybody's getting some love tonight. I love to see this. Keep them rolling, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so very much.
Tad says the Bible was written in code by using stories, metaphors, and parables. All spiritual texts are maps to the truth spoken in different ways. The problem is we focus on the stories and not the teachings. Ooh, that's really good. I like that. Uncle Doug, I think this actually speaks directly to you and kind of your arena. Do you want to elaborate on this one?
I'm not a big fan of all roads lead to the same place, but I understand that almost all of our life is spent here talking to each other, talking about, psychology and sociology and science and all this stuff. And when we have conversations about spiritual things, it's very difficult for us to get our head around. And the main way is by parable. And that's Jesus mostly told stories. The kingdom of God is like this. It's like a coin that a woman lost. It's like a pearl in a field. It's like to try to connect us to something bigger. So I get it. And that's my point too, is that our focus should be on what does this, everybody, I don't have a pet to show. I'm sorry. It's a competition now. Anyway, I think the point should be on what is it we're supposed to learn, and how are we supposed to be different? How are we supposed to be to one another? Oh, here we go. How are we supposed to be to one another? And how fat can we get our animals?
I agree.
He had to get his testicles cut off because he was too high testosterone, and we didn't want more puppies, which was the only thing that was going to stop him and make him pee again. And he couldn't pee, so we had to do it. And then he got super fat. And I'm absolutely accepting of what's being said with this. Mm-hmm. If you're saying it's an occult book, it's teaching something, again, life lessons, things like that. But don't then also say it's historical, that Adam and Eve were the first humans, that a flood wiped out the entire earth. If those things are metaphors for you to learn from, I'm down. Fine. But
so is it truth or not?
For them to have actually mapped onto reality, which is what the debate prompt was, absolutely not.
Look, I like a lot of, I'm going to throw something in. I like a lot of Jesus's teachings. I think the Sermon on the Mount is fucking beautiful. I think it's great. And I genuinely, I can't deny, I grew up in a Christian household, or I don't know if you consider Mormons Christians, but I grew up in a Christian household true. I grew up in a household that was very clearly influenced by the Bible. And I think that a lot of my moral systems came from that. And there's a reason why I don't hate religious people. I definitely have a lot of solid feelings about a lot of the teachings that are taught in the Bible. I do draw onus, though, when we start treating it like it's historical fact. I feel like I'm losing my mind when people say that the earth is 6,000 years old. And you're like, it's actually not 4,000. Like you said, I consider it 6,000. It's like, dude, we have to live on the same reality. And if you just want to have something that you believe in and you're like, look, I think that it's really important to get on my knees every time before I go to bed and pray to something and meditate, all power to you. Genuinely, I really mean no disrespect, but we do have to live in the same reality. And it feels like it's driving our cultures completely apart when we can't even agree on, basic facts. Anyway, continue. That's all.
Real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Take your time on this one.
I don't even blame you if you are really getting visions or whatever. Jesus is visiting you in your dreams and you're having these subjective experiences that are real, then I would be probably the same as you. I don't even know how to combat when people say I had visions of Jesus, the Mother Mary came to me, all this stuff. I just go, I'm not going to say you're lying. I'm just like, that happened to you. Then I get why you're like this. I get why you're fighting this fight. So with that being said, the last thing I wanted to say was I actually do enjoy a lot of the the character of Jesus. I don't know if that's really how the historical Jesus was. I think a lot of the stuff is added or attributed to him, but I do like his cynical nature, how he's a no bullshit kind of guy. I love that about Jesus.
It's hard to listen to you when you wave a knife at me.
That's a good point. Sorry.
Boy, that's not a knife. This is a knife. I'm sorry.
I mean, Ben was like sharpening shears the other night while we're sitting here on the gauntlet, and it was like, what are you doing? What is going on? Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
I got my hunting knife right over here too.
I'm a homesteader and it's shearing season, so
something to do while you're on panel. Makes sense. Little Wing says, what do ancient cities in South America have to do with the Abrahamic God being real? And I believe that was towards just in terms of comparative stories across the world and how they were being brought down.
Well, that just within 500 years, they told this guy was myth because they couldn't find him. It only took us 500 years. We found it. That's a small time period compared to like the time periods we're talking about with the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Oops. And then Little Wing says Polynesians came from Southeast Asia. If they didn't get story from Christians, they could have learned the story before leaving. Doesn't mean all of the Bible claims are true. Quick thought to this one.
I've heard this before, that a lot of the Polynesians got there after like 1200 AD or something late. So that could be a possibility by that time. If that's true, there could have been myths from the Eastern world that were adopted from the Persians or something that eventually got back to Judea, something like that. It's a possibility. Like nothing's impossible at this point.
Well, that's interesting. I would also argue, though, that we look at this right. We used to have. I just had it at the tip of my tongue. There was a site here in America that we're like nobody was here before 1400 years ago, right? And now they found a site older in South America. Well, if the land bridge theory is true, then how did they get to the site in South America? So, like, I would argue there's probably waves of people that got on boats and probably showed up. I like that's kind of, and this is why I brought up the Moo thing. I know this is going to be a controversial thing too, but like I think we found a subcontinent there that arguably could be Moo. And when I say that, I mean it was just a low-lying area that got flooded during after one of the ice ages. And if there were people living there, well, they had to go somewhere or die. You know, and like so, like I feel like that's kind of where I'm going with that. Like so, I don't know that I would talk about those people be getting it from Christians. Now, anybody after 1200, you know, yeah, I would say they could have had some taint. You know, would be my argument then.
The young Earth argument, since I'm completely outnumbered. The young Earth argument is that there was a water canopy over the whole planet that diffused gamma, X-rays, UV rays, so everything could live longer. That we were in a hyper-oxygenated environment, so everything got bigger. Everything was a vegetarian until the ark, when God said to take the animals for meat. Before that, everybody was just eating the abundance of everything and getting bigger and bigger. Some people talk about Noah being 12, 16 feet tall. Living hundreds of years, whatever, having babies through the whole span of however long, 600-year-old wife. Anyway, the Bible says that water came up from the deep and that came down from above. So if there was a water canopy, so cloud cover so thick you couldn't see the sun, it said that the earth was watered by the mist from the ground, not by rain. God said when it rained, everybody made fun of Noah. They didn't even know what that was. God gave him the rainbow as a confirmation. That was the first time he'd seen it. All you need is direct sunlight and water vapor to see a rainbow. But if you're under a canopy, you don't see rainbows. Okay, so if the water came up from the deep, it was under the tectonic plates, and the water canopy collapsed, then that meant that the earth before the ground was more continuous and there would have been land bridges all over the place. And that it's that the water above and the water comes up from beneath, it's going to move things and make mountains and everything else. That's part of the young earth argument, that why everything lives so much longer, because in a barometric chamber in a hyperoxygenated environment, cancer can't survive. If water is insulating you from UV rays and all the stuff that kills us now, everything lives longer. Reptiles never stop growing through their whole life cycle. We don't know what a 600-year-old iguana would look like, or a horned toad. So that's some of the young earth arguments. So there would have been migration easier all over the place pre-flood.
Can I ask you a question? Because just out of curiosity, because I know I'm tentatively on your side on me. Okay, whatever. I got a question of why do canine teeth exist if everything was a vegetarian?
I don't know. Why were there saber-toothed tigers? I don't know.
That's
either adapted later, or God knew we were going to eat meat eventually. I don't know.
Okay, one more question then. Just out of curiosity, why did God get mad at Cain for like being a farmer versus Abel being a rancher, right, and providing a blood sacrifice? Why was that a big issue? If like killing things wasn't a thing.
Good question.
It's not that killing things wasn't a thing. The Bible says life is in the blood. In the Old Testament, there are grain sacrifices and there are animal sacrifices. I'm not clear what the point was, except that God knows the heart. And the likely answer is that there was something wrong with Cain's heart, that it wasn't sacrificial. He didn't really mean it. It was out of obligation. There was something wrong there.
There's always a way, isn't there?
I don't think it had to do with the actual sacrifice.
It actually says in the text that he rejected him because he didn't give his.
Well, that's not literal, Gnostic. Don't you know?
Right. Yeah, don't be quoting Bible now.
A fun.
No, wait, what? I'm not on your side.
Dun, dun, dun.
Fun fact. Some of the one of the Gnostic sects that showed up around the 100 AD to 200 AD region actually thought that because Cain was a tiller of the ground and didn't use animal sacrifice, that he was the good one. So they actually would call themselves Cainites, not Canaanites. Cainites, C-A-I-N-ites, Cainites. And there were literally these people who were like Gnostic Christians who believed the Old Testament God was evil because of what he did to Cain. So it's a huge heresy. I'm not saying this is a real.
Well, check this out. You really like this then. I don't know if you know about parallel universes and all that good jazz, but apparently Command and Conquer is a parallel universe in Cain, and the Cainites are a real thing, and they still believe that. And that's actually the Brotherhood of Nod today. That's a joke if anybody watches plays Command and Conquer.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. Last one I'll read for now. I know there's still a few that came in after we took a pause, but I'll get to those later. Jim says, thank you for hosting this. You are most certainly welcome. And I look forward to having all of these guests back again. It is time to meet our panel, folks. If anybody does need to get up and step away for a second, please feel free to do so at this time. And we have plenty of
reinforcements coming, Doug.
We got reinforcements coming for all of you. I'm seeing everyone backstage, and I know how this is going to go. So, gentlemen, are you ready to meet your panelists? Here we go.